Trump's second term, and I kind of wanted to get your appraisal about whether what he's up to has been serving the working people. I thought we might start with the tariffs.
Every rich friend is begging him, don't do tariffs. So why is he doing tariffs? They ate $100 billion, which means that Donald Trump pulled off what AOC couldn't have in her wildest dreams made happen, which is he forced corporations to eat the greedflation that they had been imposing on American consumers.
Is it the case that these elites were completely wrong?
Completely.
So they didn't get anything right?
Nothing. They predicted massive price increases, which never materialized. They predicted the stock market would crash. The opposite, the S&P 500 keeps reaching new heights. I mean, everything they predicted was 100% wrong. There are going to be working-class families in America living a middle-class standard of living in 5 generations thanks to those trade deals that he signed. He doesn't get any credit for them. These illegals have taken jobs and taken wages, most of all from Black Americans, driving up incarceration rates, driving down the wages by up to 40%. Over the last 8 months, 1.5 million illegals have exited the workforce, and they have been replaced by 1.8 million American citizens.
AI and robots must take some jobs away.
And now here's the key. This is what nobody has understood yet.
Batya Ungar-Sargon, welcome back to the show. A great pleasure to have you. Audience will know us, of course, because you've been on before and you've written 2 fantastic books, Bad News, How Woke Media is Undermining Democracy, and why, what we discussed last time, so your second class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Men and Women. We've got lots to discuss. We're coming up to 6 months into the Trump's second term. And I kind of wanted to get your appraisal about whether what he's up to has been serving the working people of America. And I thought we might start with the tariffs, which some people, it might seem arcane. So I'm sure maybe we need to sort of unpack it a little bit. But it is, again, it's in the news right now because the Supreme Court ruled that they are on, it was exactly, did they rule that it was illegal or?
They ruled that the law that Trump invoked in order to issue the tariffs, he was not allowed to invoke because they ruled tariffs are a tax and only Congress has the right to tax. Now, of course, I disagree with that. Trump would disagree with that. We don't believe that tariffs are a tax. So he will appeal this to the Supreme Court and we'll see how they rule. It's hard to say right now which way it'll go.
Right. Okay. So they haven't judged yet.
Right.
Okay, and we're due to hear that ruling. Now, we'll start with that and go backwards. But if they rule that it is illegal, what happens then? Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, has said that there will be a refund to such companies. Now, surely that would be crippling for the budget. Or is that even possible, like practically? And who would enforce it if Trump was like, no, we're not going to pay the refund? What happens exactly?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me back. I hope I now qualify as a friend of the show.
Absolutely.
I watch it, I enjoy it, and it's thrilling to be back with you. Thank you for having me. I did hear the same, I think, quote you did on State of the Union of Scott Bessent, who said that there will be some kind of rebate if the Supreme Court rules against the Trump administration. I don't know how that would work or how that will go. I think most people at this point believe the Supreme Court will rule in President Trump's favor, but we'll see how that goes. What is the most interesting thing to note about this is that the people suggesting that there will be a rebate paid are inadvertently admitting that tariffs are not a tax on the American consumer. Because that rebate, of course, will not be paid to the American consumer. They will be paid to the people who have been paying the tariffs. And the people who have been paying the tariffs have been multi-billion-dollar corporations.
Right.
They ate $100 billion in tariffs, which means that Donald Trump pulled off what AOC couldn't have in her wildest dreams made happen, which is he forced corporations to eat the greedflation that they had been imposing on American consumers since the pandemic. And it's just an astonishing feat. they will, as I said, admit this sort of accidentally, but they will never stop calling it a tax on American consumers, despite the fact that we all know that those prices were not passed on to the American consumer. So I think the tariff regime is going very well.
So
And
that's key, though,
yeah,
because the elites, the economic elites, told us when the idea of tariffs, his favorite word, came up. They said, this is going to hurt. Not only is this going to fail, it went against all the economic dogma and consensus, but it would hurt the consumer. They are the ones who are going to pay the brunt. That's right?
Yep.
Were these elites wrong generally? What's your appraisal generally? You've given a pretty glowing one there, but is it the case that these elites were completely wrong?
Completely.
Was there anything that they didn't get anything right?
Nothing.
Okay.
They predicted massive price increases, which never materialized. They predicted the stock market would crash. The opposite, the S&P 500 keeps reaching new heights under this Trump regime. I mean, everything they predicted was 100% wrong. And none of them will admit it. You know, this crisis that we have in expertise is so well earned because not only do these people get things wrong again and again and again, they have no shame about it, and they will just go on TV the next day, say the same wrong thing, but they will never admit it when they were actually wrong. They'll say, oh, well, Trump brought down the tariffs from the initial 50% on Liberation Day. I mean, come on, we still have a 50% tariff on China. These trade deals he's signed with the UK, with Japan, there are going to be working class families in America living a middle-class standard of living in 5 generations thanks to those trade deals that he signed. He doesn't get any credit for them.
Could you give me an overview of where we're currently at with the tariffs? Because it's been quite a lot of flippity-floppity back and forth,
Yes.
and it's particularly with China. So can you paint a picture of what's going on at the moment?
So Trump is using tariffs to accomplish a multitude of goals, all of them extremely important and extremely noble. So he used tariffs on Mexico in order to stop the free flow of fentanyl that was killing 100,000 Americans a year. He just said, stop this, or you're getting big tariffs. He imposed those tariffs, and immediately we saw a reduction in those drugs crossing the border. Now, this is going to be...
How much of a reduction?
I don't remember the exact number, but it's significant. It was the first time in about 10 years that overdose deaths dropped. Yes.
Wow.
I don't remember the exact number, but
Right.
I should have brought that in. But
Right.
so this is going to be part of the reasoning that they bring to the Supreme Court. I mean, obviously, the free flow of deadly drugs into America is a huge emergency, thereby justifying the president using an emergency act in order to impose these tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just astonishing. You will have Democrats literally opposing him using tariffs to stop poison killing our children. It's like they're out there being like, hands off our fentanyl, you know what I mean? Hands off our crime, hands off our illegal criminals. Anything Trump does, they oppose him, even if it is something that they themselves supported, a few years ago. So, okay, that's the first thing he's...
As a side to that, aside to the tariff aspect of that, did we see that with the Venezuelan cartels being taken out or vaporized, I think was the language they used?
Yes.
Is that another sort of equivalent thing? We see the left very unhappy about that.
They're miserable about it. They are miserable that he killed, drug smuggling gangbangers.
And you think that those were legitimate things? It was legitimate for him to have done, or the administration did it? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, watching that boat blow up, I mean, there are a few things that, for me, I never thought I would experience, like the kind of the feelings that have, been generated through a lot of the Trump policy. One of them is seeing the same European leaders who mocked him and laughed at him and sneered at him come back on bended knee, begging Trump for like a little bit of grace, Like as an American... That is a great comeback story, Like every movie is built on, the idea that the guy who was like, mocked and sneered at has made, but it's not on his own behalf. Like this is another thing about tariffs. The elites hate them. So they spent 10 years saying Donald Trump is only in it for himself and his rich friends. When every rich friend is begging him, don't do tariffs, don't do tariffs. So why is he doing tariffs? I mean, ask yourself, what is the theory of mind behind Trump imposing these tariffs? He's not making money off of them. Nobody rich is making money off the tariffs. In fact, the opposite. The rich are paying the tariffs. So why is he doing it?
Here's a quick word from today's sponsor, Ground News. Let's take a quick look at how the media is reporting on Trump's tariffs using Ground News. Left-leaning Democracy Now! Ran the headline, "Total random chaos of Trump's tariffs are not rebalancing US trade." We specifically partnered with Ground News because their app and website helped me and my team cut through media bias and get the full picture on any story like this one. There are over 160 articles published on Trump's new tariffs, and we can access every single one through Ground News, complete with source context and key breakdowns. Meanwhile, right-leaning India Today led with, "Trump hits dozens of countries with tariffs, increases Canada's levies to 35%. Two very different narratives from the left and the right on the same story. Seeing all sides, regardless of political lean, is essential to making informed decisions and spotting bias. That's why Ground News' blind spot feed, which highlights stories underreported by either side, is such a powerful tool. I genuinely believe in what Ground News is doing, and I encourage you to check it out by scanning the QR code or visiting ground.news/Winston. If you subscribe through my link, you'll get 40% off unlimited access. Ground News is subscriber funded, so by supporting my sponsors, you are also supporting this show.
And that is where you see the truth of this administration. The only thing he wants is to bring peace to the world and to raise the standard of living for America's hardest working people. That is what the tariffs are for. They are to reshore manufacturing. They are to give the American worker a competitive edge in a marketplace when they have been forgotten and, just like Trump, sneered at and mocked and derided and called racist and Nazis for refusing to co-sign their own downward mobility. That's the whole Trump administration right there. Everything he's done on the economic front, on the immigration front, has been in the service of that. Immigration is very important. Over the last 8 months, 1.5 million illegals have exited the workforce, and they have been replaced by 1.8 million American citizens. It's a replacement, okay? So under the Biden administration, they opened the border, the southern border. They let in 10 million illegals, and every single one of these people was either working or living off of welfare, right? Neither of those is acceptable. But a lot of them were funneled into the marketplace. They were funneled into industry to do jobs, many of them previously good jobs, but for much lower wages than an American would do them. And I think the Biden administration's view, Alejandro Mayorkas's view, was this is how you stop inflation, is you take a meatpacking plant in Omaha, Nebraska. Okay, 300 jobs. When you have Americans working there, you have to pay them $100,000 a year and about $25,000 a year in health care. Well, what happens if you replace all those Americans with illegals? Suddenly you can pay them $7 an hour and no benefits. Because if they have to go to the hospital, the taxpayer will pay it. So this was their view. This is the Democrats' view of how the economy should work, what the labor force should look like. And Donald Trump said, absolutely not. Those are jobs that belong to American citizens. And now here's the key. This is what nobody has understood yet. It's true that the price of food and the price of goods has not gone down yet under Trump. But the fact that 2 million workers who were making $7 an hour and are now making $18 an hour, that there was a complete replacement there, and the cost of goods has not gone up, this is like an astonishing, staggering feat, and I'm not quite sure how he pulled it off. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that energy is so cheap now. A lot of corporations are eating, $1 billion in profits. Instead of making $15 billion, they're going to make $14 billion. But this is an amazing, amazing thing that you will not see reflected in the job numbers, because the job numbers are not going to show that much growth, because a lot of the growth is invisible because the job numbers don't distinguish between citizen and non-citizen. Yeah.
So look, we'll come back to where we're at with tariffs with regards to each country, but just on your talking about like why is the why of the tariffs, you're making the case that Trump is motivated by lifting up the working classes, but it's I think you might also say so. Well, part of that is also why so many Bernie bros moved towards him, and he's able to kind of capture the the Rust Belt of America. And so he's been saying this a long time. And he was saying this when he was campaigning before the 2016 election, to these sort of policies. But it also seems to me that he's got an ideology where tariffs will make all of America richer. So and we had Oren Cass on the show sort of explaining this, but before the First War and really before the Second World War, tariffs was the main source of income for the federal government. And so, do you think we're right in thinking that he understood that and was going back to the sort of that glory era for America?
Definitely.
Okay, so it's not just about the working people of America; it's about all Americans, right? Although
sure.
he's happy for the rich to take the hit in the short term.
Well, what we had developed over the last 60 years was a class divide between the working class and the elites. The elites are fine. I mean, the top 10%, they're hoarding over 60% of the GDP. So I'm not worried about them. I don't think he's very worried about them. But he sees himself as the president of all Americans. So I'm sure he would say, of course, he definitely wants a great economy. And he believes that to have a great economy, rich people also have to feel very good about the economy. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying he's not like me. He's not like quite, like soak the rich or what have you. He thinks that it's very important that the rich also feel that the economy is doing great, because then they invest more. And then, you see that growth from that point of view. So he's coupled, and I don't think this has ever been done before in human history, but somebody correct me if I'm wrong about this. He's coupled very pro-worker stuff like tariffs and immigration controls, which limit the supply of labor and allow every American citizen to ask for more money, with very pro-business stuff. So cheap energy, deregulation, and slashing corporate tax rates. That combination of he's basically doing industrial policy, but he's making private industry pay for it rather than the taxpayer. It's so brilliant. And I don't know, if I sat down and said to him, describe what you're doing, if he would use this language or Oren's language, but this is what he has accomplished, and it is truly a staggering feat.
Is this the plan that Stephen Moran laid out? I don't even remember him, but before the 2024 election, he had put out this, I think he might have done it in 2023, but him and Leitzinger, I think, who was
he's great. He's
in
brilliant.
The first administration, was kind of leading the way on tariffs. It seems to me that the plan was vaguely written out in that Stephen Moran document, which I have read. I guess the big difference, which Moran was saying, was if you're going to pull off tariffs, you have to firstly keep them not too high, and absolutely do not be erratic. Now, this is why I want to come back to how he's treating each country. And let's go with China, the biggie. He's been very erratic with the enforcement of tariffs and where they should be. And they have been very high. Can you tell me where we're at with the China tariffs?
It's very interesting with China because they were very, very high. They were at 145. He brought them down to 50%, but very much with Xi's blessing. Why? Because Xi got something he wanted even more than no tariffs, which is 600,000 Chinese students in American universities. Now, I think Trump made this calculation of the tariffs are more important to us than barring Chinese students. I think a lot of people in the MAGA base would say, no, first of all, every one of those spots belongs to an American. Second of all, why are we paying a taxpayer expense to educate the future apparatchiks of the Chinese Communist Party, right? They're going to take everything they learn here and use it to try to destroy us because they're our greatest adversary. But Trump is very smart in how he handles other strongmen. So he's very much in negotiations with them. I don't think they're very upset about where things are at, but we have to decouple from China. I mean,
So why did he allow these 600,000 students? It's worth noting that even under Biden, there were Chinese students who were had their student visas revoked because they were deemed a threat to the American state. And under the, I forget the bloody term, there's a responsibility for CCP Chinese citizens to report everything back to the CCP. So in effect, any Chinese citizen could be a spy, not in a sort of James Bond sort of way, but in a more low key. They're not paid, but they'll get status and they have a responsibility to report back to the CCP.
In fact, only the children of CCP members get this great honor of coming to America. and studying in American universities.
Oh, so others can't?
I think it's pretty much, I was talking to somebody who very much in the know behind the scenes and said there's no way for some, rural Chinese kid to get one of these. It's completely controlled by the CCP. So we're literally allowing enemy spies in to study in our universities.
But this is strange because Trump also forbade in this second administration any member of his administration or the American government from having any romantic relations or even marrying a Chinese citizen. So he seems to understand. There are people in the administration who understand the threat of China, and yet he's allowing 600,000 students in. So why would Trump do that?
It's very interesting. He has his own calculations for things. I think that he feels that getting the Chinese on board with an economic decoupling is much more important. And if we can do that safely in a way that doesn't harm our industries, he wanted the rare earth minerals as well. So I think he thought, okay, there's 3 things I want. I can get 2 out of 3 if I cede on this third one. Is that the calculation I would have made? I don't know. I don't know the backstory there. He's currently talking through Brooke Rollins, agriculture secretary, about giving basically amnesty to farm workers. I think that's terrible. But I think in his mind, there's a calculation of, well, if we don't do that, if we show up at these farms and do mass deportations, the price of food will go up. And it's very important to the American people that the price of food go down. So, there's always calculations being made here. I'm not always, on the same page, but I can see what he's thinking. I think the erratic nature of the tariffs is a huge part of why they're succeeding.
Sorry, just on that amnesty for farm workers, I hadn't heard that story. So how many farm workers do you think that would apply to?
The amnesty?
Yeah.
Well, they're not calling it amnesty because they understand that if they call it amnesty, there's going to be, it is amnesty.
Right.
They want to give them work permits. They want to expand the number of agricultural workers who can work here legally. The thing is, if you make them legal, if you give them legal protections, then they too can ask for more money, right? So the big farms don't actually want that. They want them to be illegal so that they can pay them less. And it's the huge conglomerates, the small farms, the medium-sized farms, they're all following the law. They're all employing American citizens. It's just such a myth that these are jobs Americans won't do. There's not a single industry that has more than 28% of its workforce illegal immigrants, and that includes people cleaning hotel rooms, and that includes farm workers. Even people who just pick crops, only 45% of them are illegal, and the rest, 54% of them, are legal Americans. So it's just a myth. There's no such thing as a job an American won't do. That's a myth created by the elites in order to protect their bottom line so they can keep stealing wages from working class people.
Back to tariffs, Canada.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hoo-ha about this in the media, and it's also tied up with his negging, I'd say, of saying it would turn Canada into the 51st state. But it was also a fentanyl problem going on.
Yeah.
So where are we at with Canada then?
Yeah, it's funny because they're very upset about it. But, Canada's a backdoor into our economy, right? We have the USMCA. So basically, if Mexico and Canada don't apply the same tariffs we're applying to China, China will just build its factories there. So they were not playing ball. Obviously, we have a right to say we're protecting our economy. Donald Trump was elected to protect the value of the labor of the American working class. That's why they voted for him, and that's what he's doing. But what I was going to say, which I think you will find interesting, is I do think the erratic nature is a part of the success. And I think that if he was, just being very calm about it and saying, here's the schedule, here's the plan, you would never get the Japanese to the table. You wouldn't have gotten the UK to the table because they would just wait it out. They would be like, he's never going to do it. He's listening to, cooler heads will prevail. No, it's Donald Trump. He's going to do what he feels like, and he's going to tweet about it. He's going to write on Truth Social, and you can either get on board or lose out because, now is the moment to do it. And who knows what mood he's going to be in tomorrow. And that's what you want. You want your leader to be the person everyone is scared of pissing off because everything he's doing is for us. It's for the American people.
And so the erratic nature, which seems sort of crazy to people who don't understand him, actually works to the advantage because it forces everyone to come to the table.
Now, Oren Cass, my Rebbe, who is the most brilliant person I know, does not agree with me about this.
What's his criticism? I
think he agrees probably with Lighthizer that the erratic nature is harmful to business. It's harmful to the success of the program.
Oh, but sorry, erratic is in one day it's this high tariff. We're going to add another 15% tomorrow, and then it's good. That's what you mean by the erratic nature.
Or just Okay,
I see.
I was once on the subway, and I think this applies both to Trump's domestic policy and to his foreign policy. I was on the subway, and there was like a slightly crazy person sitting opposite me. He was sort of like talking to himself, like giggling, like, like being kind of twitchy. So sort of very slightly, tolerably crazy. Okay, we pull into the station, and the doors open, and like a truly crazy person gets on. Like a person who's like shouting and screaming and gesticulating, really scary. That slightly crazy person sat up straight, shut up, and he started to behave like a completely normal person. Because, game recognized game. He knew that he better not attract attention to himself with that guy on the train. And I just feel like Trump is the more crazy guy. And so all of these people who have just, been completely dismissive of the American working class under successive Democratic administrations are suddenly like, wow, we better get our act together. Like, actually, no, it's not cool for a country to have a 20% tariff on the United States and for us to just eat that. Like, no, that's not acceptable anymore.
Yeah, the problem with the subway analogy is that everyone else who's not crazy on the metro will just change carriage. But I suppose the doors are locked in this sense that they have to deal with America because all their economies are based on the American.
Exactly, the almighty American consumer. And that Trump knows it. He knows it. The Chinese were playing a game of chicken with him, and he's like, go ahead, take your business elsewhere,
Right. So what's the latest with Canada then? Is there, in terms of the deals?
The tariffs?
Yeah.
I think that they are at between 15 and 20%. I'm not sure exactly where they are.
Okay. And he's done a deal with the UK, and he hasn't yet done a deal with Europe. Have you got any?
But the Europeans, they came to the contours of the deal.
Oh, they have already?
Yes.
Okay,
and he has a deal with Japan, a deal with South Korea, I believe, Vietnam, very important.
Why?
Because that's where a lot of the companies went from China when he put tariffs on China in the first administration. So it's a very important, that whole, South China Sea. Yeah.
So he has said that he would raise $7 trillion from tariffs.
That's not him. That's the OMB, which is bipartisan. They're now saying that, I heard, the number I heard was $4 billion.
4 billion?
Yeah. I mean, 4 trillion, I'm sorry. 4 trillion.
So Pete Navarro earlier this year said it would be 6 to 7 over 10 years.
So
Trump then said 7 trillion, though, didn't he?
The bipartisan OMB said 4 trillion.
4 trillion, which actually, that adds up with in July, they reached nearly 30 billion. So that would come out to about 3.6 trillion over 10 years.
Yeah.
But do you think the 7 trillion figure from Navarro and Trump is just classic Trumpian overflay? There's not, you don't think?
I mean, 4 trillion is incredible. I mean, it's incredible. He wants it to replace income tax. I don't think that that's feasible. I honestly think they should have raised taxes on the very wealthy. I think there should be more than, it's insane that there's one top income bracket, meaning that if you make $600,000 a year and if you make, $30 billion a year, you're in the same tax bracket. That makes no sense. And also, if you're making $30 billion a year, you're not going to notice if your taxes are 37% to 39%. So I thought the Big Beautiful Bill should have raised taxes on the very wealthy to pay off some of the deficit.
Can you paint a picture of the Big Beautiful Bill then, particularly for British listeners who might not be as familiar? Just what do we need? What are the key takeaways from
So the key takeaways are tons and tons of funding for immigration raids, border enforcement, expanding ICE, which I totally support. I basically think immigration should be zero at this point, or as close to zero as possible.
Net zero.
If there's some, Einstein somewhere who's really, really actually bringing something to the table that we don't have domestically.
Oh, so you mean even legal migration should be zero?
Yeah.
Huh. And legal migration is something like gross numbers about 1 million a year. Am I right in thinking
something like that?
It's high. It's probably the most liberal, one of the most liberal countries in the world.
Well, if you think about the fact that in the 70s, which was the high watermark for working class purchasing power, where the majority of the GDP was in the middle class, which is like the number one characteristic of a stable democracy, immigration, the percentage of Americans who were foreign born was 4%. That was a historic low. That's not incidental. It's not accidentally that immigration was really low and working class people were making a ton of money. The last time immigration came close to being this high was in the Gilded Age, an era characterized by Inequality, it was 14% then. Today it's 16% is foreign born. I mean, this is why working class wages have stagnated. It's like the number one reason. And Trump is working very hard to reverse that.
You know, I was online the other day and I stumbled across this video. It was from Chuck Norris, and it left me a little shocked. He's in his 80s and says he feels like he's in his 50s. He had some pretty cool tips in there too on what he's doing, including these 3 foods that he avoids like the plague. Now, at first I was a bit skeptical, but he explained all the things he was doing, and it was super simple. If it's good enough for Chuck, then it's good enough for all of us. But with any new method, of course, results can vary. The video is definitely worth checking out, and here is a special link just for you watchers of The Winston Marshall Show. Watch the video now at chuckdefense.com/win. That's Chuck Defense. That's a defense with an S rather than a C, .com/win. To make it even easier, I linked it below the video and you can check it out yourself. It's pretty quick and seriously, it's been a game changer. Now, back to the interview. So in Britain, mass immigration, well, I'd say serious immigration starts after the Second World War, particularly 1947. And it's turbocharged under Tony Blair, who comes to power in 97, and then mega turbocharged under Boris Johnson. How does that compare with American immigration?
Why did he do that?
Boris Johnson?
Yeah.
Probably a handful of reasons. He might have had a more global Britain sort of attitude, and he probably is of a more quote-unquote, I don't like using the word neoliberal because I don't think neoliberals don't use the word neoliberal to describe themselves, but I think he had that more globalist attitude, and you can see that in other parts of his behavior. For example, he revoked the rule that British companies had to offer jobs to British citizens before offering them abroad. And
Disaster.
it's also the case that under his premiership, we had the Ukraine war, so there was a popular movement from Britain to have Ukrainians come over, and there are many hundred thousands who did. Likewise, we had problems with Hong Kong, and there was it was actually quite popular even amongst working people in Britain to allow Hong Kong is over, but there was a bunch of other ways in which many hundreds of thousands, millions actually came in under Boris Johnson. But I wanted to understand the American sort of post-war hit. This, as you describe it, the foreign-born numbers now are so high. What's the sort of backstory for that?
Biden let in 15 million.
It's just, but J.D. Vance said there are 25 million illegals in America during his campaign.
That's probably right, because before Biden, it was about 10 million, and now it's about 25.
Huh. Okay. And is that a post-war thing, or is that how far back do we go back to understand that?
So in the 60s, they started to restrict immigration, and that's how you ended up with such a low number in the 70s. And working class is because unions had so much power. I mean, they had a lot of power, and they were saying, actually, this was the Democrats' position. You know, in 2015, Bernie Sanders, a Democratic socialist, told Ezra Klein, open borders? That's a Koch brothers proposal. That was the progressive view as recently as 2015. Trump broke these people. He broke them.
Yes.
Because obviously having an unlimited supply of illegal low-wage labor is going to come at somebody's expense. Like, it's the most obvious thing, because the law of supply and demand is like, it's undefeated. If you have more of something, it's cheaper, and that applies to labor.
Right.
So this was the Democrats' position, but as they became more neoliberal, you know, under Reagan was the one who wanted to, by the way, give amnesty to 3 million illegals. Of course, a Republican, famously, because back then it was the Republicans who liked cheap labor, and it was the Democrats who were like, you know, 1996, Barbara Jordan, a civil rights icon, who wrote a report for the Clinton administration saying, you're hurting blacks. These are black people's jobs, which is something Trump said all through the last campaign, and of course was called racist for saying exactly what everybody knows is true, that these illegals have taken jobs and taken wages, most of all from black Americans, driving up incarceration rates, driving down the wages by up to 40%. It's disgusting. And then to hide their tracks as an alibi, they call you racist if you point this out. They turned it into a racial issue. Where's your compassion? It's an economic issue that they were benefiting from because they were doing the hiring. So instead of having to hire an American, they could hire an illegal and pay them half the wages and keep the rest for themselves. So that's how you saw this squeeze. So if the 70s, the largest share of the GDP was in the middle class, it got squeezed up. That's the upper middle class stealing wages from the working class and lining their pockets with the proceeds, and working class people got squeezed down.
It drove up incarceration rates because it drove
down wages. I mean, people don't have...
and forced people into the black economy.
I mean, basically,
like the black market.
I'm not one of these people who thinks that like people commit crimes because they're poor. Like obviously there's like a criminal element that's going to be a criminal element no matter what. But I'm just telling you what a report found. A Democrat progressive produced report found that up to 40% of incarceration rates could be tied to illegal immigration and the lack of opportunity in black neighborhoods.
Yeah. So back to One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
Yes.
So there's sort of been criticisms from the right and the left.
Yeah.
From the right, and perhaps this is the most famous because this was the source of Elon Musk's falling out with Trump, was that Musk, whilst working on Doge and trying desperately to pull down government spending, was upset that this was going to saddle America. He called it the debt slavery bill, and it would saddle America with debt for decades to come, and or crushingly unsustainable debt, as he called it. Do you think that there's anything legitimate about Musk's criticism there?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the debt is a problem, and this bill expands it and did nothing to pay it down and could have easily raised taxes on the rich. Not something Elon Musk would have wanted, but, you know, the math didn't add up. And that would have been one way to create a new revenue stream. Now, Trump correctly predicted that the tariffs were going to pay a lot of that down, and that the snapshot of the economy that we had at the time was inaccurate because it wasn't taking into account this new revenue stream. I still thought that they should have raised taxes on the rich in order to pay off that deficit. So that point is correct. I think Doge was a little bit of I think it was kind of silly. They didn't find a lot. He promised trillions of dollars in savings. They found like a few billion. The largest expenditures are Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and the American people do not want you to touch that. And what ended up happening was, why I was upset about it, was this bill ended up giving tax cuts to the rich, most of whom are now Democrats, and will probably take away health care from poor people, most of whom now are Republicans. And I just couldn't for the life of me understand why a Republican administration, it's like it had this muscle memory, like we protect the rich. It's like, those aren't your people anymore. 70% of rich people now are Democrats.
Yeah.
And they haven't figured that out yet, that it's like that the person who's working 2 jobs off the books to support his family, who has Medicaid, because neither of those jobs will give him health care, so he's kind of scamming the system a little bit. That guy's a Republican and lives in West Virginia, you know?
I notice now that you're saying it's the Republicans rather than Trump. And at the beginning of the conversation, you're sort of crediting Trump for his approach to tariffs. Why have you done that switch?
Because Trump said he was open to it. He was kind of like, he kept tweeting. He'd be like, yeah, should they raise taxes on the rich? Maybe. I don't know. Like he was very ambivalent about it. And by the time this monstrosity of a bill got passed, it was like it had been through like the House and the Senate. It wasn't really like, you could see the aspects of it that like were not, like Trump didn't care about. I think he cared a lot about enforcing the border and expanding ICE.
Right.
It gives tax breaks to working class and middle class people, which is extremely important. But they were acting kind of like they were selling it like you couldn't give tax cuts to the middle class and working class and not to the rich. And the other thing they were doing that really bothered me was they were acting like corporate taxes and the taxes of rich individuals are the same thing. They're not. We should have a very low corporate tax rate because corporations give people jobs. Like it's just silly for them to be, they're investing in the people, like in the best possible way by putting money in their pockets. They don't need to be paying, 35% in taxes, I don't think. But to act like that is the same as like a billionaire or a millionaire not being asked to pay a little bit more into the system that made them so freaking rich in the only country on planet Earth where they could have amassed such a fortune, like that bothered me a little bit.
And you would like to see that through income tax or through a wealth tax?
Either. I don't care.
Well, I guess it's significant because we're having this conversation in Europe, not just in Britain, but it's seen it in Norway. The rich flee when you put wealth taxes on. Now, you might say of America, where exactly are they going to flee
exactly.
to?
Where are they going to go?
But it might be the case that they'll find somewhere. They might go to Switzerland. They might go to the Emirates. Great.
They can enjoy themselves in the Emirates. They'll get bored after 10 minutes and come back. I don't believe anyone's going to leave New York because of Mom Donnie. Like, I don't believe that.
Well, a lot of people left New York during the pandemic.
That was different. I mean, during the pandemic, you had like actual states that were open where like life was going on. And here it was like a ghost town. It was like life had ceased and there was no end in sight. People really, if you moved to Florida in like the first 6 months, you got 2 whole years where your kids were in school and you could go to a party and go to church. That's different. Like comparing like New York during the pandemic to Florida, you can't really, that's not the same as like America compared to like the UAE, you know, like they want to move to the UAE.
Well, a lot of these wealthy people are building, I hear about billionaires building bunkers in New Zealand and the sort of Pacific Islands. And it doesn't seem that crazy that they
really?
would leave.
I mean, you would know better than me. I'm
only reading the papers. So your criticism actually is about the big beautiful bill is one that is coming from the left, which I've seen elsewhere, which is that budget office project federal spending on Medicaid will be reduced by $1 trillion and the number of uninsured people will increase by 12 million by 2034. That's a sort of criticism of the bill. You're hesitant to put that at Trump's feet, although it seems like you might be in the realm of the speculation.
Well, he wanted it to pass, so I think it was a mistake. I think people who supported him and voted for him are going to lose their health insurance, and I think we should be trying to get more people better health care, and Medicaid is the Cadillac of health care. We should be trying to get more people, more poor people, more working class people, more Republicans. We should be trying to get them better health care, and this is a thing that bothers me about Robert Kennedy. Like Americans aren't unhealthy because of dyes in the food. They're unhealthy because they cannot afford high quality health care and they're too broke to exercise and cook healthy food because they're working 2 jobs and raising kids. It's like, because he's rich, he doesn't know anybody like that. And so he's like, it's the dyes in the food. It's the autism from the vaccines. It's not. This is quackery and it's dangerous. Americans are unhealthy because they're poor. And it's just obvious. I wrote this book, Second Class. You travel, you talk to working class people. Like you see what their lives are like. We would be obese if we had to live their lives. Like, it's very, very, very hard. And so I just think, I thought that was a mistake. Yeah, Trump shouldn't have let that happen, I think. I think that they should have done a better job on that. And he wanted to have it both ways. He wanted to say, I'm not cutting Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. We're just going to cut the fraud. Unfortunately, like some of the fraud is deserved, is good. I'm glad that some people who are working really hard have Medicaid, even if they don't qualify for it, because it means they're getting preventative care. And it's going to cost me more if they never see the doctor and then show up in the emergency room with some sort of heart event, So I just think that but the worst is that, so, I would have to go on CNN, and be the MAGA voice, right? But all these people who will never give Trump any credit for anything he's done. And then there are things I think are bad, but it's like, you want to be, I would never say something I didn't think was true. Like I've never as a journalist said something I don't think is true. But there's something like really unfortunate about like going into a situation where no one is being honest. No one is being honest about the real situation. Like I can say, I didn't like this about the administration. I don't like this. I don't like Bobby Kennedy. I think he's dangerous. I don't think he should have that job. I thought the Qatari plane was was a bribe. I thought we shouldn't have accepted that. I have real problems with the big, beautiful bill. I still think Trump has been the most transformative, efficient, effective president of my lifetime. Daily, I feel like so proud to be an American and like elated that a person in power is doing these things that the voiceless would want, but no one ever paid attention to them. That if they were given the reins, this is what they would do, this is what they would ask for. And he's actually doing it. Like completely uncorrupted by all of his rich friends being like, how dare you do this? How dare you do that? I need illegal for my workforce. How dare you put on tariffs? It's costing me a fortune, blah, blah, blah. So I think like overall, like I really have no problem saying like, sure, yeah, Trump shouldn't have, Big Beautiful Bill was not great. It's not my favorite thing that he's done. But like, does that outweigh all of the amazing things that have happened in this country since he took office? Like not even a little bit.
One key aspect of the sort of tariff ideology or worldview is reindustrialization. And, you know, part of this is, and part of the support for Trump coming from the flyover states is that these regions of America have been deindustrialized, and they didn't just lose their jobs, they lost their culture, and as a consequence they lost a lot of money, and it's I visited some regions of North Carolina, and I've seen it up close, and I understand that. But a key aspect then is reindustrializing, is bringing jobs back. And just as people were criticizing Trump's tariffs, saying it's going to hurt the consumer, they're also saying, or the economic elites were saying, you're not going to be able to reindustrialize those zones. At best, they would say it's going to take too long to bring manufacturing back to those areas. And at worst, and I really think it's a bad faith statement, but I did hear it a lot, which is those people don't want those jobs, which is kind of a classic snobby comment, I think. You have just been at a Reindustrialize conference in Detroit by a mutual friend run by Austin Bishop. Don't know if you actually met him, but
I did, yeah. He's phenomenal.
He's a very impressive young man. I wanted to get your take of how the reindustrialization of America looks 5 months into his second term.
So we just got a jobs report that found that we're losing manufacturing jobs at the moment. So a lot of people were holding this up as proof of the failure. Obviously, in my view, a lot of those were jobs being done by illegal immigrants. So it would make sense that we would be losing them. Our whole economy, our working class economy, service industry economy, manufacturing, everything was built on this like faulty foundation of illegal labor and cheap products from China. So there's going to be some readjustment. But the Democrats were acting like because we had made these errors, therefore they were inevitable. And Trump said, no, they're not. It's at least worth a shot to try and reverse the trend. So we're sort of in the midway point of the first year, a little bit further. It's hard to say how it's going. I think that there has been a lot of interest. We have at this point $10 trillion committed to reindustrialize America. I can tell you for certain there are Americans who want those jobs pretty desperately. And here's an example of how the elites work. So there was a poll that came out of the Cato Institute, right? Big enemies of populism, right? Free market people, libertarians, that asked people two questions. The first question was, should America have more manufacturing jobs? And the second was, would you like to work in a manufacturing job? And to the first question, should America have more manufacturing jobs? 80% said yes. To the second question, would you like to work in a factory? 25% said yes. Now, the free market right and the anti-Trump left were holding this up as, ha, 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 factory jobs for thee, but not for me. Do you realize if we had 25% of the United States working in factories, that would be double the high water mark of the 70s? Like, that would be incredible. We would replace China as the industrial base of the world. Do you understand how amazing it is that 25% of Americans would love a job like that? And the elites are sneering. They're so full of contempt. They're like, ha ha, just 25% as opposed to the 80% who think we need these jobs. They literally can't think their way out of the fact that the poll said the exact opposite of what they were saying it was saying. It was astonishing. So I hope it's going well. It feels like it's going well. That Reindustrialize conference, wow. I mean, I came out of there like on a high because you really felt like a lot of the people there were, it felt like the brightest minds of their generation. And instead of going into like, Google or Facebook or what have you, which is where they would have gone 10 years ago, 15 years ago to like optimize ads or what have you, this mentality was there that was kind of like, if you don't produce something that exists in this world, you're nothing. Like to be an American is to make a thing you can hold. It was truly amazing. And there was this real sense of like noblesse oblige, like a new feeling of like, what do we owe the country? So the event was like radically nonpartisan, but it was unbelievably patriotic. And it was just great because it had, brought together, labor unions, government, industry, legacy industry, Lockheed Martin was there, but also a lot of new tech companies, guys who build robots in consultation with working class people, not to obviate their labor, but to make it easier. And basically, the number one lesson that I took away from there was every factory in America is 50% understaffed. It could be working 100% more hours. So getting people is unbelievably difficult. And the robotics aspect of that means that none of these sort of AI revolutions will be replacing workers. They will only be making them better and more efficient and raise their productivity, which means that without actually changing much of the workforce, you can get a lot more out of each individual factory, create more profit, create more productivity, while enhancing the labor of the American worker.
Well, look, this isn't my domain, but it seems to me that AI and these sort of robots, as you say, must take some jobs away. It can't be the case that there's some trade-off, there's some downside. I mean, what was it? The idea that AI will replace lorry driving. I don't get if it's not a manufacturing job, but AI is going to affect the working classes negatively, even if even if it's a net gain, as you might seem to be.
So, have you heard of Javin's paradox?
No.
So in the 19th century, this very interesting paradox emerged to where the advent of cheaper coal was predicted to make fewer trains available and trains cost less. And what ended up happening was the opposite. Because coal got cheaper, so many more train lines emerged because they could afford to build more train lines, and therefore there was much more train travel, and therefore the costs and the productivity and the profits went up. Sometimes things don't happen exactly the way that you expect them to. Because something got cheaper, suddenly there was a lot more of it.
So you said,
and that was you couldn't have predicted that. When I hear people talking about how they are using AI in the workforce, it's always as like a benefit to a worker. And it's much less as a replacement for a worker. And that includes like every context that I hear it being used in. I think entry-level white-collar jobs are probably the one area where that is kind of not the case. And I think that actually explains things like Mamdani. There's like a lot of resentment now in people who graduate from a fancy college, maybe have student loan debt, saw themselves as promised one of these great, careers in a white collar profession, but the whole entry level to that profession has been wiped out by AI jobs. These people are very angry. And that resentment is fueling a lot of the populism that you're seeing on the left, particularly among younger people. But in the working class, like I was talking to a guy.
Wait, sorry, just on that, is that populism on the left? Is it coming from a sort of middle class bot at the beginning of their career rather than working class populism?
Yeah, I would even say like elites, like people who were trying to get into the jobs that would have gotten them into the top 10% in their 30s because of their degree and because of the premium that was placed on a college degree for much of the last 30, 40 years, who are now, working as baristas in Starbucks because a lot of those jobs don't exist anymore because of AI. They're very angry, especially because they see themselves as somehow much better than working class people because they have a fancy degree. And the number one thing they teach you in American universities is to have utter contempt for labor and people who do it.
So it's like a bourgeoisie populism.
Yes, it's like a downwardly mobile bourgeoisie. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so I also wanted to ask you about the Intel story.
Yeah.
Because I do think this all sort of ties into all of this. Trump has announced that he's going to take roughly 10%, just under 10% stake in the US tech company Intel, who are chip manufacturers. The company's not doing so well. They are not the number one chip manufacturer in America. Obviously, that's NVIDIA. But he nonetheless wants to do this. I want to ask you, firstly, what is this like how the Chinese operate? Is this a sort of is this a mixed economy? Is this socialism a little bit? Bernie Sanders has come out quietly approving of the move. I wanted your take on the Intel story.
I think it's great. I don't see why it's socialism. I mean, why isn't it capitalism when somebody pays for something and then they get something in return? So the American taxpayer, I mean, the Chips and Science Act was, what was that, $50 billion? I think 10 billion, 12 billion, 15 billion went straight to Intel. Like, isn't that capitalism when we give somebody money and they give us something in return? Also, it's a
But it's state funds.
It's
and it's state ownership.
Well, it's taxpayer funds. It's not exactly state ownership. Well, it's state ownership, but there's no control. So it's a non-voting
Which is what the Chinese would do. The Chinese would have state ownership and control. They'd have CCP
and I'm sure they would own more than 10% of the company.
Right.
So I don't know. I think this is great. And, you know, what we have in America more often is privatized profit, but the risk is public. And here what you're saying is, no, why shouldn't the U.S. taxpayer get some of the benefits here? And by the way,
Isn't the risk public, though, with this? Because if it doesn't go well...
Yeah, but at least some of the profit is now going to be public as well. Like,
so it's public risk and then public...
But at least we're getting something in return for it.
Right.
This is very normal. So after the 2008 financial crisis, the U.S. government took a big stake in a lot of companies, basically just to help them get back on their feet.
Much to the chagrin of a lot of working people and
well, I think the thing that they were chagrined by was not that so much as like the $700 billion in bailouts plus $30 billion in bonuses to the crooks who like stole their homes, basically. So, yeah, so I don't think it's socialism, but the fact that I like it so much makes me think maybe it's not quite
well, it seems
free market capitalism.
It's more mixed economy-ish.
Yeah.
It seems... Trump's also said he wants to do a sovereign wealth fund, and this sort of the same sort of, I guess, or the same sort of ideology, and trying to generate more wealth for the people. And so generally you're supportive. And do you think that there's a problem with chips? Where are you this battle with China and Taiwan over the chips? How significant is that with regards to this story?
It's important. I mean, it's a national security risk. We should be able to make our own chips.
Right.
Just because every piece of defense equipment we have now has chips in it. So, yeah.
Right. Now, we've touched on Musk a little bit and his criticism of the beautiful bill, the so-called beautiful bill. I wanted to know what you made of the MAGA right, tech right divergence, the split, the breakup, and what it means, the consequences of it, and was it inevitable? Is it irreversible? And can you make sense of it for me?
Well, I'm not sure it's happened. I mean, was it last week on Thursday? Trump had all the tech bros at a big dinner, and they all seemed to be, very happily kissing the ring, and everyone was there but Musk. So I'm not sure the breakup happened. Obviously, the interest in the agenda of the tech bros is very much at odds with that of the working class. They want, Elon Musk, for example, wants limitless H-1B visas. He said this is the hill he will die on. He wants to import, millions more people from India to do good tech jobs. MAGA right wants those jobs to be done by Americans. There was this big famous blow up over Christmas of last year where Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy were saying, no, American workers are too lazy and stupid to do these jobs.
I bet you love that.
Oh, I know, right? Yeah. Well, I had a very because I've been on his case from the beginning. I think he's basically, he's in China's pocket. His entire supply
Musk
chain,
is.
For
One
Tesla.
One strange thing about
China.
Musk is that given how critical he is about so many things going on in the world, he's very critical about what's going on in Britain, and he's called it a Stalin state or a police state. But China, a literal police state, a literal, nominally communist, although I would say probably literally fascist state, he's absolutely stumm on.
Yeah. It's worse than stumm. He's completely obsequious. You know, he'll tweet the most embarrassing things about the CCP and how great it is and happy birthday. And whenever Xi tells him to, he built a showroom for Tesla in Xinjiang where the genocide of the Uyghurs is happening. It's disgusting. And his whole supply chain for Tesla is in China. Now, the Teslas that are made in America, 80% of them or so, the parts are made here. But the Teslas that are sold around the world, those are made 100% in Shanghai. So his whole fortune is, rests on the largesse of Xi Jinping. So to act like this person could ever be America first, I think was always a farce. It was always ridiculous. He's got how many children with how many women? He's never married any but the first. So there's on the social front, he's on a very different page than the MAGA right. On the immigration front, he hates the tariffs. He believes in small government. I mean,
he can be America first in the sense that he clearly is sort of an American supremacist. He thinks this is the greatest country.
If he thought that, he wouldn't be trying to bring in millions of Indians. I mean, why would he be trying to? He literally said the American workforce is not as talented or hardworking as Indians or Chinese people. You don't say that if you're an America supremacist. I'm an America supremacist.
Yes,
I would never. You don't talk that way. You don't do that kind of thing. You don't try to steal great middle-class jobs from working-class Americans and give them to people from another country if you really, truly believe those things. Now, I will probably get called racist for saying that, but this is the hill I will die on. You're taking those jobs from Black Americans, and that's unacceptable to me. But so in that sense, I think the tech bro right and the MAGA movement are very much at odds.
When you, as a lefty MAGA, when you saw at the inauguration Bezos, Zuckerberg, Musk, all of these quadrillionaires and bazillionaires side by side, rubbing shoulders with Trump, given everything you said in this conversation, everything I know about you, that couldn't have sat right with you.
I think Trump saw them as trophies. He was like, look who's come begging for.
Does that bother you?
Honestly, at this point, I think Trump has really proven that he cannot be bought. I mean, he literally slashed and burned the entire global economic order on April 2nd. He literally took an axe to the entire stock market because he said, I don't work for you. I don't work for Wall Street. The split screen you have to keep in mind is not like Trump talking about the working class and then the tech bros at the inauguration. It's 2008 financial crisis. 10 million Americans lost their homes. Barack Obama comes into office and the first thing he does is give $700 billion to the crooks who took those homes and including $30 to $50 billion in bonuses. You compare that with what Trump did on April 2nd, where he said to the entire global order, the entire Wall Street, I don't work for you. I work for that guy who lost his home, who's been trying to recover ever since. So I think that's really the split screen. I mean, at the time in the inauguration, I was bothered by it because I was like, what are they doing there? That doesn't look good. But by now, I feel so totally convinced that every person, there was a meme coin thing where people who bought the meme coin could have a dinner with Trump. And I thought, that's bad. That looks like corruption. And then you find out what this dinner was like. Yeah. So it's Trump. There's 200 people. Trump shows up, lectures them for 50 minutes and walks out. It's not like...
Is this the Trump coin?
Yeah. It's not like a secret, smoke-filled where they're, Mr. President, here's what I need from you. He's happy for them to spend their money.
Yes, but the problem with the Trump coin is slightly different, isn't it? Isn't that he...
Again, it's not my favorite thing that he's done. I think he feels that it's his right. His family should not be forced to not work anymore. They should not be forced to not... You can say he's capitalizing on the name, on being president. Not my favorite thing. It doesn't seem...
It's not technically corruption, but it just feels...
Exactly. It's not above... it's not above the appearance of corruption. I would not have advised him to do that. But when you see like what the people he's selling influence, what kind of influence do you get by sitting in a room? He walks in, yells at you, lectures you for 15 minutes, and then walks out. There's no face-to-face. We have the list of people who bought it. So I just don't feel so bothered by that. Again, I'm not defending it. I don't think it's like, but I think a lot of the mythology around Trump, that he's just in it to give rich people, to make things better for them, has been like very, very soundly disproven on the immigration front, on the tariffs front, a bunch of other things.
Batya, you are my favorite MAGA lefty. Great talking to you.
I'm your only MAGA lefty.
We've had some other MAGA lefties. It hasn't gone so well. I want to ask you some more questions over on our Substack.
Indeed.
We're going to talk about Twitter, Epstein, and I want to even talk about Israel. I've got some controversial opinions that I want to test on you.
Yes, we're
Before we do
that,
firstly, I said earlier in this conversation, I've forgotten what the term was in regards to China citizens' obligation. It is United Front. That's the term I was looking for. But you've got a new show coming out.
Yes, I do.
Tell us about that.
I have a new show. It's called Batya! And it will air on News Nation on Saturdays at 4 and 11 p.m. We will pre-tape it because I am Shomer Shabbat. But I hope you will watch it. It'll be a combination of big interviews, panel debate, some fun stuff thrown in, and a monologue by yours truly about what we learned about America this week. So I'm really, really excited about that. News Nation, Saturday, 4 p.m., 11 p.m., starting September 20th.
I have absolutely no doubt that it will be a tremendous success. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Is there anything else you'd like to bring attention to? People, obviously, we've mentioned the books and you're on social media. We'll put links up for all of that. Let's go over to the Substack. Batya, a great pleasure.
Thank you so much. God bless. Thank you.
I wanted to ask you about Twitter and whether you think it is a better place now.
Definitely from a free speech angle, it's better because conservatives are not being censored anymore. But in its use to me as a journalist, it's much worse. Conservatives have gotten a big boost due to the algorithm. And as a result,
why do you think that the online right is so concerned with Epstein?
That happened. Like, that has all been substantiated.
Yes.
What has not been substantiated is that...
Last topic before I let you go. Also a spicy one. It's on Israel.
Hamas's goal was not just October 7th, but to destroy Israel in terms of its standing in the world. It succeeded.
What are the downsides of losing the propaganda war, do you think?
Well, first of all, they're not unified behind him. The thing I should say about Bibi Netanyahu is...
Thank you for watching The Winston Marshall Show with Batya Ungar-Sargon. Head over to winstonmarshall.co.uk now for that extended conversation with Batya, where we explore Musk, the Epstein case, and Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu, amongst other topics. That's all at winstonmarshall.co.uk, where you'll also enjoy ad-free viewing and exclusive content. But until next time, be well.